Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Oh, You podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Oh, You podcast. Today, we have the honor, the big kavod for us, of having with us Rabbi Moshe Shwed, who is the director of All Torah. It's a pretty big title to be the director of All Torah. That's a lot. You do a lot. We're excited to have you here. We wanted to start by welcoming you, saying Bruchim Habayim, because we have to translate into Lakewood and make sure that that everything is above board.
That everybody knows I live in Lakewood.
Everybody knows now.
Okay.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Moshe. Really, it's Moshe Pinchas Shwed. But once I got into the business world, I just dropped that. And some of my family members weren't too happy about it. So
Everybody calls you Moshe Pinchas at home?
most people call me Moshe Pinchas, and there's a story behind that.
Yeah.
I'm named after my great-great-grandfather, who came to the United States of America in 1913.
Wow.
He came to Baltimore, and he was a Talmud of the Netziv.
Wow.
Josh,
Look at this.
for those who don't know, Josh, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, Josh gives a weekly short shiur on the Netziv, on the All Parsha platform.
On your platform, you encouraged
Exactly.
me to do it. We'll talk about it a little bit later on. But
So Moshe Pinchas,
was a
my
Talmud.
namesake, was a Talmud of the Netziv
wow.
in Volozhin. So his son, which was my great-grandfather,
Yep.
when I was born, and they gave my name after his father, he wanted very much that I should be called by both names, and we kept to that. And just to jump a little bit further, when I got married, my father-in-law, who you probably don't know who he is, his name is Moshe Zimmel.
Uh-huh.
So
I didn't know that either.
Since he's called Moshe.
Yeah.
So I was called Moshe Pinchas, and he's called Moshe. That was
That
good.
was okay.
20 years later, we'll have to revisit that.
We just call you Rabbi Shwed now.
Okay,
So
that's good.
So you were born
So I was born in Muncie.
in Muncie.
Born
Okay.
in Muncie, raised in Muncie, went through elementary school in Muncie, 2 years Beis Shraga, local Muncie high school. Then I went out of town to Long Beach. I was there for 6 years. Went to Eretz Yisrael to learn in the Brisker Yeshiva. If you ask which one, the Yeshiva of Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik. And I was there for a total of 5.5 years as a bacher, and I got married and moved back there. So I lived in Eretz Yisrael for 5.5 years, and I still feel very attached, and I love going back, and I love people that I work with know that I love speaking Hebrew. If you want to go with the Hebrew,
Let's
we
go.
can.
איך
ready?
העברית שלך?
העברית שלי זה מספיק טוב, for short to speak to the taxi drivers. לא שוטף, אבל מספיק טוב.
Very good. Okay. And then when you came back, married.
Came back married. I did the regular thing. I moved back to Lakewood. My wife had a very good job. She was a speech therapist, and I was sitting in yeshiva, and I was learning for quite a few years. And
In Beis Medrash Gavoa.
it's Medrash Gavoa.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's some people who learn there.
Some people, yeah. Some
small
people,
yeshiva.
small
How
yeshiva.
many
When
guys
people
live
ask me
there?
where I live,
Yeah.
I say in a small town in central Jersey. And since we love, we'll get to this soon, but we work with people who live in places all over. So I can't forget the person I met in Teaneck, New Jersey, who asked me, is there a supermarket in Lakewood that's the size of Cedar Market? Which is, I guess, the biggest supermarket in Teaneck.
And you said there's
and I
nothing
said-
that small.
Yeah, there's nothing that small. There's like probably 12 of them. So I moved back to Lakewood. I was there for a few years. In 2018, I was approached by Rabbi Elefant, who knew me, and he was giving a Daf Yomi share here, and he said, the OU wants to expand their online presence with the Daf. Do you know anyone that could do this? The truth is, I asked my wife for somebody's phone number, which I think she had in her phone. And she says, why don't you just ask him if you could do it? So I asked him, and he says, you probably could, I just can't hire you. Because,
Family.
it says, call Rabbi Stephen Weil. So I mentioned him, Zachar Shmuel Atayv. He was the one that, I don't know if I'm jumping a little bit, but he had a very close relationship with Stephen with Olav Shalom, and he had gotten money to invest in broadening Bavli, Daf Yomi learning. So I was brought on to direct the content, and from there, I really took that and built it out. was like a year project, and we launched by the CM Hashas in 2020. And Baruch Hashem, we had E.C. Birnbaum on board, who's sitting here in the room, who was a tremendous partner to get this off the ground. Because I literally, when I started, I could ask Josh, do you know what UI and UA stands for? No, not UA. See, I still don't know. UI and UX.
UX is user experience,
Very
and
good.
UI is user interface.
Very good.
Okay.
So I didn't know what those two
I
words.
prepped for this interview.
Very good. I didn't know what those two things stood for when I started. But we had.
Well, there's a lot that you didn't.
A lot
know,
that I
right?
didn't know. Yeah, we could get to that.
You're sitting and learning.
I'm sitting and learning.
You were sitting and learning in 2017, 18, right?
Yeah. So actually, for 2 years, I was teaching in the afternoon, second Seder. I was going to Muncie every day, which wasn't something that was going to be long term, but it was a good experience in a Beis Medrash. Learning with guys.
What age were you teaching?
It was older guys. It was guys in Beis Medrash, post-high school guys. And it was a great experience, and I loved it, but I knew it wasn't going to be long term. So when this came along, I had no idea what it would be.
Right.
I didn't know what it would be. When I took the job, I thought I would spend most of my time like preparing shiurim or like figuring out content to go on. But like with everything in life, things evolve. And one of the things that I've learned from my parents and grandparents and Rabbeim is you got to try to follow and try to see where Hashem is guiding you. And Baruch Hashem, I think
so you started in 2018?
August 2018. Again, this is
You met with Alan Fagan, who was sitting in this chair back then.
Alan Fagan was sitting in that.
And he asked you, how many users do you think you could get for All Daf? What was your answer?
I said if we have 10,000 app downloads, I think that'll be a success. And when we launched in 2020, I think we got 25,000 downloads like a week after the CM Hashas.
Right.
So we knew.
And now 4 years later.
4 years later, after All Daf, All Parsha, All Mishnah, All Halacha, we're north of 185,000 app downloads. Now, the truth be told, not everyone who has the app on their phone uses the app every day. You know, there's probably a number out there of how many apps people have on the phone that they don't use. Sure. It's probably hundreds. The fact that they have them means that they're already...
It's a good start.
It's a good start.
Instead of the phone maybe being a distraction for other kinds of things in not healthy ways, and there's enough we could talk about.
Which is a great conversation.
You know, that's worthy conversation. Right?
Yes.
I'm sure that was a question back in 18, 19 when you were about to launch this and think about websites and apps and what are we really doing? And back, it wasn't that much earlier than that when there was a big asifa at City Field, right? I mean, I don't remember what year that was. That said, you know, these phone things, it's trouble.
Torah technology, Judaism and technology is something that is a struggle and a challenge in every sector or across the spectrum, wherever you are. Everyone is struggling with technology, how to use it, how much to use it, how much it should not become a distraction to your life.
Right.
And it's something that has to be considered and used for a good purpose.
I heard there's a Rabbi Feldman in Atlanta, and I heard a story that first thing in the morning, he types in and he types A, and there are two possibilities. You heard this story?
I think he published it. Say the story.
Yeah.
He published it in the Shprach magazine.
Atlanta Braves, All Daf.
Right.
And you have a choice, right? So but the fact that it's a choice, the fact that it's not just the Atlanta Braves, the fact that people can pick up their phones, right? And I have my reminder, my thank you Hashem reminder, no matter what, that, okay, when I pick it up, I have an opportunity to do something that's a bad distraction or something good. The fact that we have something that could be good, and now you have All Daf and different modalities, different kinds of things that are available there, and All Mishnah, which has grown into All Mishnah Junior, which we could talk about and at different levels, All Parsha. I was blessed by you to encourage me. I don't know if you remember the story. You came to me and you asked if I would do a little shir. I said no. I think how many times you said no to doing this podcast. Now I said no a few times, and it happens to be my father was nifter, and my father was a big lover of the Netziv. Right. And so I said, wow, might be an opportunity to do something with some of his Torah, some of his thoughts, and now Baruch Hashem, we're finishing up 3 years.
It's incredible, and you probably feel like you've gained immensely from the Netziv.
Not only have I learned from the Netziv, but I've been in Chavrusa with my father for 3 years.
Right.
And I owe you that. Just even not just as a user, but as somebody who's able to share, right? And now we've launched, at least in the beta, All Halacha, right? So it's just going and growing and going. When you were sitting in 2017 and 18, learning in base managers, doing a little teaching, could you have imagined, 5-6 years later, the breadth and the depth of the Torah that you're sharing with the world?
No, I could not have imagined. And I would lie if I say I thank Hashem every day for it. But when I remember, I try to just take a step back and thank Hashem that I have this opportunity to be able to facilitate and allow people, give them the opportunity to learn. The breadth and scope of people that are using this literally range from Hasidish in Williamsburg who barely speak English to people that are not Orthodox. They're non-observant.
You said you thank you, Hashem, for putting you in this position. We thank Hashem for that, and we thank Hashem for you. And one of the things, and it's a theme in sort of in our conversation so far, but it's something that you do. I'm not sure if you recognize that you do it, but it's a genius management tool, and it's a genius relationship tool, which is you saw an article from Rabbi Krauss, never met Rabbi Krauss before. You sent him an email thanking him for the article and talking to him about it. You saw somebody came on and signed up for a daf. You reached out to the person. You saw somebody was doing something. You reached out to them. This is something that you do, right? Where did you learn that this was the right way to engage people? Right? It's something that we could all learn. You have an opportunity. Somebody. Let me go say thank you for writing an article. Let me go say thank you for giving a donation. Let me go say thank you for signing up for a daf. And it's led to all kinds of great stories and further relationships.
It's a great question. I didn't have any formal training for it. I would say it's intuitive, but I don't take the credit for it. I, thank God, have wonderful parents and grandparents who are personable people, and they always, and I would say it's part of my education from my Rabbi, is looking and recognize there are people out there, people you could have an influence on, and it's part of my personality. But I grew up with parents who always had people over. I talk about my grandparents who are Holocaust survivors, both my father's father especially, who I grew up with in Muncie, had a tremendous influence on me. He was literally a learning and chesed machine, a simple balabas, who was first in diamonds and then, worked in other areas. But someone who was up every morning learning at 4:30 in the morning. He was somebody, the friendliest and warmest person. He was in the nursing home feeding people every single morning.
Wow.
Every Shabbos. When he moved down to Florida, he started a big chol in West Palm Beach. So he was someone always with a good word for people. So that's probably where it comes from. But again, you gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention, and that's great. That's where you go.
So all of a sudden now, right? It's not one all, and it's not just content, right? There's 5 alls. And who knows where it's going. Each of the alls has grown. Number of deliverers, a number of programs, and different kinds of options. And then there's content, and then there's fundraising, and then there's managing, and then there's UI and UA and UX, and right, and all of these things. So your job is pretty full. You also have a family, Kananahara. How many children?
I have 8 children. Kananahara. Oldest is, I think she's 19. Youngest is 4. And I'm the oldest of 11. So I grew up with a large family. And
so that also, when you have downtime, if such a thing exists, what do I do
in my downtime? So it's
the commute from Lakewood.
Yeah. I don't usually listen to the alls.
That was a layup. I was feeding you, that was...
Yeah, you listen, of course.
Of course.
I love Jewish history, certain Jewish history speakers I like to listen to. Rabbi Dr. David Katz is always fascinating and a good laugh. There's Aubrey Hirsch from England who's fascinating. Eliezer Bruck is somebody who's fascinating. I still have a little bit of my baseball fandom there, so I may check in on Yankees. The Mets. Yeah, it's the Mets. I like to read and spend time with my family.
Yeah. We're going to do some rapid fire questions.
Let's go.
Okay. Now, sometimes I say rapid fire and people give long answers. You're not going to be held to it. What is a must-have dish at your Shabbos or Yontif table?
For my family, they have to have their sourdough challah, which they make, and I got to bring one for Josh because we've.
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm
we
ready.
got okay. So Bli Neder, we're on film. We owe Josh a homemade sourdough challah.
Good.
Save him $20 in the bakery that week.
5 times it's a little more than that, but okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All daf is learned in how many countries across the world? Do you want options?
You don't have to give me options. No.
Okay.
So in the world of technology, there's something called IP addresses. And you could have your IP address in Iran or in Iraq. Maybe there are Jews in Iran using all daf. That's possible. But even in places where you probably don't think there are any Jews, it's in as many countries as there are in the world. That's where all daf is accessed.
We got to fix this answer then, because what we have officially is 54, but that sounds like
I don't
a lot
know where
more.
that 54. It's way more than 54.
Okay.
But again, it's like saying how many countries access Gmail. It's literally that.
In what year did Rabbi Henry Pereira Mendez start the OU as a union for Jewish synagogues? 1876, 1898, 1920, 1943.
So the OU is kind enough that at the end of every single one of their correspondence, they write the OU was founded in 1898. I got it?
You got it. What's your go-to sefer to pick up and learn?
It's going to be a straight up plug for this person whose name is Rav Uri Tiger. Rav Uri Tiger,
Sure.
You could find his story on Behind the Bima podcast with Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg. Plug to him. I did a conversation with him with Rabbi Eliezer Brat. 1 minute, brief description who this person is. Grew up non-observant in Tel Aviv. Became observant, he listened to this whole story, speaks perfect English because he loved watching TV with all the English subtitles in Israel. Has a whole story how he became from. Got married, was learning in Kollel during Shemitah, Hilchah Shemitah, and came across Rav Chaim Kanievsky's sefer called Derech Emunah. Actually, honor of Chaim Kanievsky's sefer, it says Bal Derech Emunah. So that was like his primary sefer. Yep. And he started writing questions to Rav Chaim. And Rav Chaim Kanievsky will respond and says, please keep on writing. I like what you're asking me. And after a couple of years, he said, I got to go visit this rabbi. You're talking about someone who didn't grow up observant.
Sure.
And this is 25 years ago. So Rav Chaim Kanievsky wasn't a household name. And he went to Bnei Brak, and he's like, you're Tiger who writes to me? He says, yes. From that time on, he became Rav Chaim's proofreader. Rav Chaim wrote Sfarim, and if anyone goes to Rav Chaim's Sfarim, Chaim Kanievsky's Sfarim are little letters that are inclusive of Kol HaTorah Kula.
Yeah.
Everything, manuscripts, Rishayim Achra, everything. And this person became his proofreader. He took videos of him talking to Rav Chaim, real conversations. He has hundreds of hours of videos of him talking to Rav Chaim. He became extremely close to Rav Chaim, and he started writing Sfarim. So he wrote a sefer called Deif Gebis Shuva on Rambam Hilchos Shuva. It is a mind-blowing sefer, written like the Mishnah Berurah, like Rav Chaim. It's an incredible sefer. So right now, that is my go-to sefer, and he includes everything.
I got to pick it up.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. This is an opportunity. You've done this already with me once, walking around the halls. I think on All Parsha, maybe All Daf. You get to ask me a question. Turn the tables.
What gave you the energy and your passion for learning Torah?
So I think there's something that has to do with my family and where I grew up. Just my father being a rabbi, my mother learned herself. So like in my family, there was that. And I think over the years, just, having role models and teachers who were excited about, who elevated, who sometimes probed and pushed me beyond, what I thought I knew or what I thought capable of. And so I really think it's, again, it's the role models in the family and the role models outside the family that help you to think beyond who you are and think in Torah.
That's a great answer, and I think we both could share, even though we pray every single morning. We beg Hashem, and we need to do that to make Torah sweet. Torah is not always easy, and someone shouldn't think that it's going to be easy. But when you work and you do it properly, and you find if you need a mentor or someone to talk to, there are times. Maybe you can relate to this. There are times where you feel like I just don't want to go away. Right? It's not always. It can come once a week even. right? Like, just this is so sweet, and like I just want to keep on having more of this.
So, what's amazing is that at my advanced age, I'm still meeting people who are showing new sides of Torah in ways that I never really thought possible. So, for example, we've spoken about my Rabbi Yossi Zakatinsky. I went to a shir of his. He gives a weekly shir on Shabbos, where he begins in the Gemara. And it sounds like a yeshiva, a brisker. I went to the Gush, so I learned a little bit the brisker derech, right? And it's a Gemara, and you have the Bavli, and you have your Shalmi, and you have two, Tzvei Din, and you have a Chakira, and you're going through it, and the Rambam, and different lashons in the Rambam, and there's the Rashba, and the Chachmei Sfard versus Chachmei Ashkenaz, and he brings it in. And then he says, and so from a Pneumius perspective, and this is something I had never heard before, and he pulls a thread, and he brings that thread back through the entire subject. And so here I am, learning Torah in a brand new way. And it's just an amazing thing with Torah that it can become fresh and new every single time you look at it. And to be inspired and to have these people who are inspiring role models who are thinking in different kinds of ways, it's just amazing. And it's a testament to you. You keep finding a lot of these people who are now popular.
There's a lot more we could talk about, and there's a lot more
to do
with everything in life. But Kihem Chayenu v'Orech Yameinu.
Amen.
We focus on what's important.
So along those lines, in order to send us off, we ask our guests to give us a bracha for the OU, for your colleagues, for your participants and all the alls. Give us a bracha, please.
There's one bracha that really encompasses everything. Rav Chaim Kanievsky just says bracha v'atzlacha. So he says two words which encompasses everything. But really, we ask Hashem that He should fulfill everything that we. Yimali Hashem called b'shalus libeinu l'tayva. We ourselves don't even know what we need. We just know that we need to have the basics, right? Good health, good family, and we ask Hashem, please take care of everything that you know that we need, and we should have energy, and we shouldn't waste our time. Important. We should recognize, what's important, and how it's always joke around. People ask, like you asked before, like, what do you do in your downtime? Yeah. So some people say, like, I do this and do that. I say, I wish I could do that also, but I prioritize how I waste my time. And we should all be able to recognize our kaiches and the things that we need and be successful.
Amen. And with that bracha, we send it right back at you. Kol mishalos libecha. Sometimes we know what our lave wants. Sometimes we don't even know. Your story is, you didn't even know. You thought, I want to learn. Maybe I'll do some teaching. And now you're doing some teaching, right? And so even the things that are on your heart, Hashem should continue to give you strength, should continue to give you chizuk, chazak ve'ematz, chayil chayil, to keep growing Torah. For the
Amen. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Moshe Pinchas. I can't hear you.
Zos Chanukah, and I thank everybody for joining. Rabbi Elefant taking some time out of his busy day, and Josh Goldberg, whose idea this was to have this gathering on the last day of Chanukah. There are two important reasons why we're here on the last day of Chanukah. One of the major themes of Chanukah is what we do every day. We spend our time on All Torah, promoting and sharing Torah, and that is what the Yevanim essentially wanted to take away from us. As we say in the Alanisim, Lashkicham Torasecha Laviram Yad Chukei Ritzonecha, and the nace was that we were menatzeach Zaydim B'Yad Oiskei Sarasecha. Another important point of Zos Chanukah is, the Sfarim say, it's the last day of the Yom Noraim. Anecdotally, I was at a little shtibel this morning, and the Gabbai sells the aliyahs. So this morning he says that it's the last day of the Yom Noraim, and there's a big schos to get an aliyah today. I don't know if that's true or not. If there's a source to that, he obviously wanted to make a few more dollars. So he was selling the aliyahs with that in mind. So we thought, who better than have Rabbi Elefant join us to share a few words about what we should walk away from Chanukah with, Chanukah Tafshin Pei, followed by a brief question answer on some of the interesting questions in the Kashrus world today, and perhaps a few daf questions, and then to end off with Josh sharing a little bit about how he got involved in All Torah and what he's been able to do using the platform, and then actually learning with people live in Englewood a few times a week. Rabbi Elefant.
Shalom Aleichem. It's a pleasure to be here, even though it is quite a busy day, but it's good to be able to reach out.
Rabbi Elefant on mute.
I'm not on mute. I'm not on mute. Rabbi Schwade, do you hear me?
Rabbi Elefant, continue.
So it's a pleasure to be here, particularly as you said, Rabbi Schwade, on Zos Chanukah, a day which is the most auspicious day where we could accomplish so much, and we collect all of what Chanukah brings to us, and these last moments of the Yontif. I do want to begin by applauding you, Rabbi Schwade, for the incredible work you've done in growing our platform. What we thought was just a dream, something that we could never have imagined. And now look where we are in the number of programs that we have, all Daf, all Mishnah, all Parsha, all Halacha. It's incredible what we've accomplished. It's incredible how many people listen to our programs. And it's really, you get a lot of credit. We're very fortunate that we have people, supporters like Josh Goldberg on the call as well. What he's done and continues to do. We didn't know Josh, he just showed up. A malach from Shemayim, a malach from heaven showed up and said, I want to be your partner in helping this wonderful project grow. And we're so thankful for him. We're so thankful for him to be here with us and continue to be with us for many happy, healthy years. You spoke about Chanukah and Torah. The Chassidish Sfarim say that when we look in the Gemara Masechta Shabbos, Daf Chaf Aleph, when the Gemara begins to speak about Hilchas Chanukah, the Gemara says, "My Chanukah." The Gemara asks a question: "What is Chanukah?" And the Gemara answers the Tana Rabbanan. The Gemara quotes a brisa that speaks about what the entire Yontif is about. The many Sfarim explain, "My Chanukah." What is Chanukah all about? The Tanu Rabbanan. Chanukah is a time to re-energize ourselves in Tanu Rabbanan and learning Torah, and that remains with us for the rest of the year. But I think that the message of Chanukah is a little more than that. You know, the halacha is that if you're lighting Chanukah candles and you want to light an avuka, you want to light a torch, you want to use a candle, a big Havdalah candle to light your menorah. So we would all assume that that's the best way to light your menorah. You're really going to have a good fire going. The halacha is that that is disqualified. You have to light a little candle. And why do you have to light a little candle? What's wrong with that big candle? And the answer perhaps is because the Yontif of Chanukah is to teach us that these little things, the small things, are what count. And a big torch is not what does it. the little candle. And that's really what happened then by the Nes of Hanukkah, where you had these 13 Chashmonoim who don't really count next to the Greek Empire. But their little action goes so very, very far. And I recently saw most incredible story, which I think is so related to this lesson of Hanukkah. And then we're going to tie it together to what we do every day, we who learn the Daf Yomi or learn other things. There was an individual, there was a levaya, there was a funeral in Israel in Rehovot. And the person who was leading the levaya was a regular individual, not a rabbi. And people came over to him and asked him, since when did you become a rabbi that you're officiating at a funeral? So he says, I want to tell you a story. He says, it was Sukkot, and my family, Baruch Hashem, has grown, and I wanted to build a new sukkah, a larger sukkah, but the place where I would build it, I needed permission from my neighbors to be able to build a sukkah over there. And my building is a mixed building, religious Jews and not religious Jews. I thought that the religious Jews will be happy to give me permission so I could do the mitzvah. I wasn't sure about the non-religious Jew. So I went first to him, see if I'll get his permission. I knock on his door. His name was Tzachi, and he answers the door and he says, what could I do for you? And I told him what I wanted. And on the spot, he says, no problem. I'll be happy to give you permission. He says, let me tell you my history. My history is that my family originally lived in Poland, and in World War I, we emigrated to Bulgaria. And in Bulgaria, there were no yeshivas. There wasn't much of an Orthodox religious life. Our family became secular. And then we ultimately moved to Israel. I really am totally irreligious. I have two children that really, one doesn't even live in Israel anymore and don't really have any connection. And if I see your family, I want to support that. So this person says, I saw I had a moment that this person wanted to come closer. So I told him, every mitzvah that every Jew does is so, so vital. Why don't you do one mitzvah a day? He says, okay, what do you recommend? He says, I recommend that you say Kriya Shema every day. He says, what is it all about? And he brings a siddur and he teaches him what Kriya Shema is, how it represents our relationship to God, God's special feeling towards us, our feelings to him. He says, you got a deal. I'm going to say Kriya Shema every day. He starts to, that was it. A couple of weeks later, this man gets a knock on the door early in the morning. And I know for people like us who learn the Daf Yomi, it's never that early. But for some people, aren't up at 5:30 in the morning. And he knocks on the door, and it's this man's wife. And she's completely hysterical. And she says, what's the matter? And he can't get her even to talk. But to make a long story short, he goes into the apartment, and this person had passed away. Person passed away. And she says to him, the night after you came to see my husband, it came nighttime, and he took out a siddur, and he said Kriya Shema. And he said, it's a good idea. I'm going to say Kriya Shema every day to affirm my relationship with God. And he said, every night, my husband, who was totally religious and knew nothing, started saying Kriya Shema. And last night, he went to sleep, but he said Kriya Shema before he went to sleep. And he didn't wake up this morning. But the last thing he did before he left the world was said Kriya Shema to God. When I thought of that story, it was such a powerful story. I thought about it. People talk to us about, I learned the daf. I learn every day. What am I accomplishing with learning the daf? Do I really remember? Do I really need to do this? And here we see what it means when a person takes out from their busy, busy schedule the time to learn in a shir, whatever shir you attend, wherever you attend, and you connect yourself. That don't think is insignificant. That's that little Hanukkah candle that burns and burns forever. And that's why the Gemara says, Harogel Bener. If somebody is constantly doing the mitzvah of candles, candles on Shabbos, candles on Chanukah, the Gemara says, Havale Bonim Talmid Chachamim, will we have children? We'll all have children that we have much nachas from. We'll have children that will continue in the way that we want them to continue. And again, the people, not me, but the people who are so supportive of us and help this happen, you certainly will be blessed with wonderful children. Havle Bonim Talmid Chachamim, you have children Talmid Chachamim, and you yourselves will be Talmid Chachamim, and you'll bring the light of Torah to the world.
Thank you, Rabbi Elefant. Let's jump straight to the questions that came in. Most of them are Kashrus related. So the first one, what'd you say?
Why?
Why? They must be speaking to one of the leaders in the Kashrus industry, so they want answers. How does the OU decide which questions to present to which Paisik? Rabbi Schechter is involved currently. Rabbi Belsky was involved. Olav Hashalom. Rabbi Weiss is involved. Are there certain questions that go to certain Paiskim? And how do they get directed? And how is that decided?
So I hate to bust anybody's bubble, but most of the questions that come up here, I tell people, we in Kashrus, you might have heard, there are different tumults, there are different issues that come up. I'm doing this so long, I'm here at the OU 37 years, that there's almost nothing that isn't a rerun. Every issue I'm dealing with, we've already heard and we've already dealt with. So I would say the vast majority, certainly almost up to 90% of the questions we get are questions we've all received many times and have studied those questions and have written decisions from Rav Belsky Zitzal, Havdil Ben Chaim, Rav Schechter Shlita, Rav Elyashiv was most helpful to answering questions. So 90% of the questions are not new. The 10% of questions that are new, we, Baruch Hashem, here in Kashrus, have a very talented staff, a staff of Talmidei Chachamim that do know how to answer questions. And if not, we bring the questions, whether to Rabbi Schechter, to Rabbi Genak, to Rabbi Weiss, to Rabbi Mordechai Grosser B'nai Barak. I often tell people that when Rabbi Yosha was alive, and I used to travel to Israel, I used to travel then maybe even more often than I travel now. Every time I came to Israel, I had no problem getting an appointment with Rabbi Yoshev and Rabbi Yoshev giving me time. And somebody told me, they once asked Rabbi Yoshev, Rabbi Yoshev's time was so limited and it was so hard to get an appointment with him. And even if you got there, you were in and out before you walked in. And somebody asked him, why are you so generous to Rabbi Elefant? He says, because I know he's not asking for himself. When somebody asks a question from the OU, he's asking for Klal Yisrael, and I feel a responsibility to help him and give him the answers that they need. And we really, Baruch Hashem, have had that experience with almost anybody we reach out to in our world, that when we have a question, these people will give us the time and the energy and the resources to get us the answer.
Okay, thank you. Next question. When buying frozen fruits, whether it's strawberries or blueberries or vegetables that have an OU certification, I guess a most common one is you walk into Costco and you can buy a bag of frozen strawberries with an OU. Does that mean that they are fully certified and there's no need for any checking afterwards for insects? What's the process once you buy that bag with the OU on it?
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I always have a story to answer the question. So many years ago, there was a hashgacha, a certification that was certifying romaine lettuce. When you speak about vegetables, probably one of the most complicated vegetables that we speak about that have infestation issues are romaine lettuce. And they didn't have a special system in place for washing or for checking, but there was this supervision on the bag. And I called the rabbi and I asked him, how do you put your symbol on that bag? What are you doing? He said, I'm not doing anything. He said, so I said to him, if you're not doing anything, we know how problematic romaine lettuce is. So what are you doing? He says, I don't certify the insects. I only certify the vegetable. So we don't have that attitude here at the OU. When we put the OU on a bag or whatever, unless we're expecting the consumer to do something, and then we'll say so, but that's very rare. You could eat it because we say it's kosher and we're taking responsibility for all of the halachic issues that are involved, including the insect infestation.
Piggybacking off that, I remember people have asked in the past, they buy raw dough with an OU. Do they have to take challah afterwards? I'm assuming the same answer applies.
The same answer applies. If it's not a Jewish-owned company, it's not a problem. And if it's a Jewish-owned company, we'll make sure the challah is taken off, as we do whenever we give hashgacha to baked goods, whether it's the matzahs that you buy with the OU, or if you go to a pizza shop that you're buying pizza and they makes a dough and you have to take off challah. Of course, we're not just saying that the ingredients are kosher. We're saying you could eat the food.
The next question may not be so relevant to actual OU products or OU restaurants, but it comes up in people's houses all the time, especially those who have younger children. What does the Rav think about separate bottles of ketchup for dairy and meat? You know, I could think of situations in my home with little children. Perhaps they're not that careful and they may take the ketchup that's for meat, you know, and maybe touch it to the hot dog or the hamburger. How careful does one have to be with that? Would it make a difference if you're dealing with little children or not?
So it's a better question than you make it sound. I think it's a very decent question. I know that the Poskim say that every Jewish home should have separate salt shakers for dairy and for meat. So, you know, the salt shaker of the time of Chazal is a bottle of ketchup of nowadays. You know, maybe people don't want to eat salt because they're not supposed to eat salt, but who doesn't eat ketchup? And if you really feel that you're putting, that somebody, you know, I didn't grow up in a world that you had to put ketchup on everything, but I'm also an old man. But if you live in a world where ketchup is needed to put onto every food, and you're putting it on top of food that's hot, and the steam going up from the food into the ketchup bottle, I could see a strong reason why you should have separate ketchup or whatever condiment for fleischiks and for milchiks. These are the kind of things, and I speak about this often. I'm sure, not at this time and place, we could have a long discussion why it's not necessary. You know, no, you could tell me that the food that you're serving on your table is not that hot because it was that hot, who could eat it? And the steam that's coming out is not that hot. And there's all sorts of reasons why it should not necessarily affect the kashrus of the ketchup. And I'm also certainly not saying that if I were to come to someone's house and I discovered that they only have one bottle of ketchup that they use for fleischiks and milchiks, I'm not going to not eat in the house. That's just not true. But, you know, part of the lesson of kashrus is the lesson of chinuch, and to train ourselves and to train our family to be thinking about these things. Could you imagine the chinuch of a child that sees that his parents, her parents, are so careful, they buy 2 bottles of ketchup, and one is dairy and one is meat. That child's sensitivity to kashrus, as they get older, and as they will have their own home, will be so much more serious than the person who father or mother had a reason to say everything is kosher. And I think that's an important element in training our children what kashrus is all about.
Okay, last question before we get to Josh. It's really 2 questions. I'll put them into one. We got 2 interesting Keurig questions. One is, does a Keurig have to be toiveled? And in fact, the person wrote that he sees on the OU website that some say to sell it to a non-Jew. Rabbi Elefant could explain what that process is. The second question is an interesting, more of a Hilchah Shabbos question. There is something on the market. It's a manual Keurig. The person even shared a link to it. Is there a way, perhaps, to use it on Shabbos? Maybe if you're doing klisheni, is there a bishul issue? Is there a borer issue? Is there perhaps an issue when you plunge that needle into the foil on top of the K-cup? Maybe you're ripping letters. So Rabbi Elefant can comment on both of those, and then we'll get to Josh.
In terms of the tefillas kalim of a Keurig machine, and it's great that you asked the question, Rabbi Shwade, because if you're following our Kitzur Shulchan Aruch shir on all halacha, which I don't know if you are, you'll know that we're learning Tfilas Kalim now. So if we're learning Tfilas Kalim, the halachas of Tfilas Kalim, most appropriate time to ask the question. There are many reasons why one does not have to tovel a Keurig machine. It's primarily plastic. And since it's primarily plastic, we don't tovel plastic. Most people don't say plastic is requiring tefillah. There are only 2 metal pins in the Keurig machine. If you're able to take them out and tovel them and put them back, that would be great. Most people won't figure out how to take them out, and they certainly won't figure out how to put them back in. And therefore, it's not necessarily. Rebelsky told us that we don't have to tovel a Keurig machine. I learned by Reb Tuvia Goldstein, and he many times felt that any electric appliance that you could only use when it's plugged in is mechubal l'karka, it's considered connected to the ground and may not require tefillas kalim. It's not something he said we should rely on by itself, but it could be part of a consideration. If you could somehow make it non-usable and then make it usable, so then many poskim, as we said on the shir, would consider it a Jewish manufactured vessel because you made it usable. And if you want to be able to sell it to a non-Jew and then let him use and he gives you permission to use it, great. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary. Your other question about the Keurig machine on Shabbos, I don't know. I would not recommend that anyone should brew coffee on Shabbos. There's so many questions that come up with brewing coffee on Shabbos, with how to make coffee on Shabbos, kli sheni, kli lishi. I just don't think you can. I think that's part of being a religious Jew and being a Shomer Shabbos. Just not, you could survive the Shabbos without the Keurig machine.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Elefant, for joining us and for the message, what to take with us, to focus on the small things. And Rabbi Elefant called me out for not being up to date on Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. That's a small thing that perhaps I have to follow better, even though I'm administering the app, but I am not up to date on the Kitzur learning. So thank you, Rabbi Elefant. And Josh, are you there? Here he is. He's still muted. Okay, he's unmuted. Josh, first of all, thank you for this idea. Wonderful to spend a few minutes on
Good.
Zos.
I just want to say every beginning has some ups and downs. So like if we didn't have the volume on right at the beginning and stuff, this is our first project of trying to get more interactivity with the AllDaf app and the opportunity to speak to Rebbeim. So this is just the first pilot project of what might be an exciting next few months ahead.
Yes. So Josh, we could do an hour, you and I, discussing so many fascinating aspects in your life that would inspire people. But we have a few minutes now, so let's focus on the learning and daf part of it. When did you start doing daf yomi?
Well, it's been a long, winding road. I actually started studying the daf in college at the Wharton School, where we hired a teacher from Lakewood to come in and teach with us. Hard to believe it was almost 28 years ago. And after that, I started learning on the west side where I lived, and went to different shiurim during the day or in the afternoon, depending on my schedule. My commitment to learning the daf has increased dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years, and I'm like a lot of people who are probably listening to this or on the AllDaf regularly. We use a Schottenstein Talmud. Most of our learning is somewhat self-taught. We spend as much time on the English side as we do on the Hebrew, or maybe even more. And even with all that, the AllDaf app has added so much more. So about 11 years ago, I was offered the opportunity to teach the Daf Yomi one day a week at the shul I was attending in Manhattan. And I used to wake up at 4:15 in the morning on Tuesdays. That was my day. And if my kids weren't sleeping, they remember seeing me learning at the table with the Gemara, which, by the way, I want to thank my kids for allowing me to always be able to give classes. Now I've started to teach on Sundays at 8:15 in the morning in Englewood, New Jersey, and that started in 2020. So sometimes my kids don't know what's for breakfast that morning, but yet they still let me get out. And it was really then in 2020, as you know, Rabbi Shwed, that the Aldaf became a much more frequent and more powerful tool for learning Torah as the new cycle of the Daf Yomi just began.
So you've mentioned your family, so I'm going to get straight to that. How has your commitment to daily Talmud Torah, primarily Daf Yomi, how has that changed yourself and your family? You mentioned a little bit, but maybe elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So first of all, obviously, what I tell people who want to start learning is that when you daven, it's your commitment to talking to Hashem, to God. But when you're learning, it's that God or Hashem is talking to you. And in all relationships, you want to have a two-way communication. You want to have the ability to talk and to listen. And I think that having that in my home has really changed my entire home and the way my kids react and behave and focus on Torah learning, as well as my extended family, my parents, my sister, etc. But let me just tell you a little bit more about what I've done with the Aldaf. So in 2020, I started using the Aldaf more frequently. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Aldaf is a powerful app. It's not just the amount of learning you could do, but the ease of the app, all the shiurim. There is nothing else online that I can think of that has made such a difference in learning like the OU Aldaf app. And someone even mentioned to me a few months ago when I was traveling that outside of the ArtScroll Daf Yomi, which was commissioned by the Schottenstein family, there is no single gift to the Jewish people for learning like the OU Aldaf app. So starting in 2020 and until now, since I give a shiur on Sundays, on Saturday nights, my kids know it's usually pizza, takeout pizza, bringing it back to the house. And I listen to Rabbi Rosner, Rabbi Elefant, and Rabbi Leibowitz on Saturday night. And then I finish off with Rabbi Stefanski on Sunday morning. So I listen to all four shiurim as well as other aspects of what's on the Aldaf app. For me and for others, I'm sure, it's a complete game changer in terms of understanding the page and also being able to really review it and study it in a lot more depth.
Really appreciate the support, Josh. One last thing, which is something I'm passionate about, and it's something that you do very, very well. There are so many people out there who are working, businessmen, family men like yourself, who have realized that they have the opportunity and the wherewithal to inspire others to learn as well. Could you just share with the audience how you've done that, what you've done very briefly, and how you do it? And maybe others out there could do it as well. They don't have to be a rabbi. They can go to work and help others learn with their passion for learning.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. I mean, so I've been working since I graduated college. It's been over 2 decades on Wall Street. And what I found was that, especially post-COVID, people in the communities around that I were involved in liked to go to shiurim to feel connected again. There was a lot of loneliness during COVID, the inability to be part of a pod. And since 2020, a group of guys in Englewood, which were affectionately known as the Grumberg Minyan, which was named in memory of Irving Grumberg, one of the fathers of the Minyan Yossi Grumberg. And this was really probably since the Siyum of Masechet Tanis, we became this band of brothers. And what I mean by that is that each one of us took a page or a day, and we would commit to teaching it to the other people in the Chevra. And this learning has re-electrified a community. The ruchnius and daily opportunities have increased dramatically the Torah learning in Englewood. And it's not just the learning, it's the banter, and it's the camaraderie, and learning the daf is infectious. Many of the guys in the group actually said they have not learned for over 30 years. Some of the people in the group said they haven't even learned for 60 years. And the growth in the learning for this group of 15 to 20 consistent guys has been incredible. There's also an Englewood Torah Center at night, which has 65 guys learning in Englewood. All the rabbis in the community are supportive of all the learning that's going on. And the Magidei Shiur that we have in our Chevra really try to personalize the shiur. So for me, I try to do 3 things when I try to start to get people ready for the shiur. The first is the significance of the day, happy birthdays and other events. Obviously, Rabbi Elefant talked about Zos Chanukah. in 1839, the first photo of the moon was taken by French photographer Louis Daguerre. And that's connected with a lot of the stuff we've been learning recently on the daf of when the Sanhedrin decides on when it's an Ibor Shana or when it's a Rosh Chodesh. We try to do a bibliography of a rabbi on the page. Today's daf talks about Rav Ada bar Abba. And some of us know that in Kiddushin, he was born on the same day Rav Yehuda Natzi died. We also know how much he spoke publicly. And in Masechet Tanis, he was one of the rabbis that was known to pray for water. And we also read one Rashi out loud as well. But the reason why I decided on the All Daf is because Torah learning online is the future. Anyone who's tracking any of the sites, whether you're using the All Daf, which is the #1 site, All Torah, All Parsha, All Mishnah, or other sites like Sefaria or YU Torah, you will know that the online website is the growth of Torah learning. And without being involved in that, your head might be in the stand over the next 15 to 20 years. It's as a high growth potential as any of the technology investments that I would study. Getting involved in the All Daf today, somewhat near still the ground floor, can make a dramatic difference, not just in your own learning, but really for the entire Jewish people going forward.
Thank you, Josh. See, Josh didn't think that I invited him. I mean, I invited Josh on to speak about learning Daf Yomi, and here he's a paid commercial for All Daf.
I will
We
tell you,
appreciate it.
Shwed, I've only known you for about 5 years, and some people who might be on this because I told some friends I'd be on the webcast today. But truthfully, the amount of learning that I have picked up has really been catalyzed by All Daf, and I speak among a lot of my friends, and this is the site that people have gone to really solidify their growth and learning. So I hope you don't realize it's not really a commercial. It's really the truth of my life, that without this site, I certainly wouldn't be anywhere near the learner that I am today.
I really appreciate it. The genuine feeling from your heart. And
I had one question for Rabbi Elefant if he's still on. I don't know if he still is or
he
not.
on? Let me see. I know he had a busy day. Is he still on? I see Jacob Kubietsky's here, and I see Yale is here. Thank you for joining.
I'll mention one quick thing, Rabbi, which is the Masechet Sanhedrin is known as the only Masechta that starts with a Greek word. There are other Masechtas that start with Aramaic words, but there are only a few Greek words that have been accepted in the Jewish language. Sanhedrin, Apitropos, Gematria, etc. Why do we choose Sanhedrin as the name rather than Masechet Bezdin? It's even a stronger question today on Zos Chanukah, where the fact is that the Greeks were trying to nikbitzu alai, have us stop learning Torah, and yet we name one of our Masechets on with a Greek background, which means counsel. And clearly, there's two messages there. One, the more rational answer is that at that time when the Gemara was being written, the Greek was the accepted first language, and Sanhedrin was a right name for it. But I really think it means more when you think about the history of the Sanhedrin, how it's Shivim Ish or Shivim Panim LaTorah, that the key for the Sanhedrin is to really have all different languages understood and all sort of aspects of a Bezdin. And therefore, Sanhedrin might be a better way to describe what really happens in the Jewish court rather than the traditional Bezdin, which is what people usually would describe a court of 3 or 21 or 23 or 71. And that's really something that I see in the OU All Daf as well. Many different shiurim, different types that you can choose from. All these aspects of it. It's sort of like a virtual Sanhedrin for people who want to learn the daf.
That's an amazing Dvar Torah and analogy, and I appreciate it. So let everyone get back to work. It's the first day of the new year, so the people on Wall Street really have to pay attention to what's going on in the stock market. So really thank you for taking of your time, Josh. And I see there are only 9 people on the Zoom, but there are many people. The Zoom was only for the people that Josh shared, his inner circle, and everyone else was on the YouTube channel. So thank you, everybody, for coming, whether you're on YouTube, you're on Zoom, you're on the All Daf platform. And as Josh said, let's hope this is the first of many, and let's try to get together and talk and learn and grow. Freilichen, Zos Chanukah, and a great new year to everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Appreciate it.